Hey class, if you're watching this video, you must be in the data types module. In this video, I want to connect to Sample Superstore and mess with the data types and explain how I'm thinking about them when I modify these data types. Might step into the views inside of Tableau, but I really want to stick to the data sources tab and try to explain every little aspect of what this part of the user interface can control and why. So let's get started. I'm just going to click on Sample Superstore, and when I do, it actually takes me straight into the view. Now, it takes me into the view, and in the data pane, we see all sorts of stuff. We see dimensions, we see measures, sets, parameters, we see all these groupings. Where did this come from? I literally just clicked Sample Superstore. Where these things are coming from is your data source. Since we only have one, we know it's the active data source. Now, what I want to focus on, again, is the data sources tab. It's this tab right here. And there are multiple ways to get to this tab. And the ways that we need to get there from the view, it says sheet here, but let's call it view, just to help us out later. And one of the ways would be right-click, edit data source. It takes us to the data source. Interesting that this little dialog box pops up to take us back to sheet 1. Because this is the first time we've looked at this data source in the Data Sources tab, Tableau thinks we haven't visited a sheet yet, so it actually wants us to go to a sheet. Now, if I go to a sheet, per the instructions, and then go back, it's not going to give us that same pop-up this time. Great. How else might we view the Data Sources tab from the view? Well, we can just click on the tab. And that's going to be the way that I recommend doing it most often. The reason for that is it's super explicit. We are calling this the Data Sources tab. It's a tab in the bottom left of your screen that'll take you to the sort of preview pane of the active data source. So why not just use that? It's a great way to get there. Another way you might be able to get there is clicking Data, and Sample Superstore, the data set, and Edit Data Sources. This takes you to the Data Sources tab as well. But for us, we're just going to stick to this little click the tab. I think that's the best route to, it's the best way to go. It's a great way to get there. So let's just stick to that. Okay, so what are we seeing in this Data Sources window tab? What are we seeing here? Alright, we've got a few icons in the top. Sometimes I will use this little refresh icon. If I've got a live connection to my data source, let's say it's an Excel spreadsheet that I just updated, and I want to refresh that data, we just click it. It does a little refresh. Great. Basically, just going back to where this file lives and taking another pull, doing another little update. And we can see that this file actually lives in our Tableau 10.5 English US data sources folder. So we'll just cancel that. Now you can imagine you would have a Excel spreadsheet hanging out in your own file that you just modified. You saved Excel, you saved that data in Excel, and then you want to click refresh. Fantastic. All right, we've also got to save. Okay, we can save the workbook here. It's not really specific to the data source, so that could be a little confusing. It's asking us if we want to save the Tableau workbook, the TWB. I don't want to. And I'm actually kind of surprised to see that here. It's not really data source specific. All right, what else do we have? Let's just stick to this pane real quick. So we noticed our connections and how we can edit those or rename a connection. Not sure I want to rename the connection, but it looks like that's something that you could do. We could add a connection. Let's see what I've got. So if I go to my drive, just simply go to training, we can go to templates, data, Anscombs, XLS. Open that, great. So this is where you can do some Tableau calls them cross database joins, but basically two different data sources, right? Two different connections, just pulling tables from both and joining them to get a result set. Now it's freaking out because I don't have anything that's in common between these two. So it's like, what do I do? And then the result set down here is reflective of just that. Can't get anything. Joining on this helps me in no way. I did a left outer join on, I don't even know. I don't think I have any ID really. Yeah, it's just not going to work. It's just not going to work. So we can pull that off and we can remove that. But if you were to have a couple different related data sets, maybe, I don't know, you've got sales per zip codes and you've got populations for similar zip codes. Great. Connect to your one sales by zip code file, and then add another connection to say the population by zip code file. Drag out the tables from both, join on zip code, and you're good to go. You should have a result set with all that information there, coming from two different data sources. Pretty freaking handy. It hasn't been in Tableau forever. It's actually a really huge thing that they've accomplished with that one. Okay, so next we can actually pull this off, right? So this is how we sort of start out. And you see a few things here. This is because we're connecting to the sample superstore, and it's a saved Tableau data source, meaning it's got this special Tableau data sources .tds extension, and there have been some calculations that were made in this saved data source, and those are hanging out here. They're not part of our data source. They were calculated in Tableau, but because we're connecting to this data source, there's some metadata associated with it, right? Such as these calculations, and when we pull in the appropriate table, those calculations are happy, right? They're satisfied. If we look at the calculation, we see that it references profit, it references sales from this orders table. When I drag orders back off and we edit, profit's not happening, sales no longer exists. This calculation doesn't know what to do. References to undefined field profit. Maybe it should be references to profit, undefined, references to sales, undefined, etc. When we pull it back out, everything's good again. Great. You notice we can drag multiple fields out here, do that thing. We can union tables as well. I'm not going to worry about this right now. If you have questions about unioning, I would be more than happy to make a video, and I likely will make a video about unioning in the future, but I'm not at this moment. So, what else can we do? Alright, we've got this little control here. Click a drop down, new data source. What does this do? Let's explore a little. Okay. Go back. Okay. Actually, I'm going to go forward and pull this out. Actually, pull it off. I'll put data out here and go to sheet 1. Yeah, Exactly. Great. So it added a data source. Now we have two data sources. And when I go to the data sources tab with this one, actually, it's just selected. But if I pull this out into the view, we see that this is the active data source. When I go to look at it, we see that it brings up Anscombe, right? It brings up this data source with the, the various fields that we can edit here. Now, if I were to create another view and make the sample superstore the active data source and go to the data sources tab, now I see that it shows us the summary of the sample superstore. Cool. Really just for demonstration purposes, I'll delete this, and I'll move this, and I'll switch back here. I want to close that connection, go back to the data source, and now we know what this does. It doesn't really do anything for this data source, it just literally gives us another separate, not related data source that we might want to join on in a view inside Tableau. Now right next to it is where we can edit the name of this data source. So right now it's sample superstore. We could just call it superstore. Enter it. Go to the view, and we see our name's changed. Great. You might get some connections from a server or a file, and they're looking a little rough. You can spruce them up in here and make it very clear what what the dimensions and measures, etc., are relating to. Right? When you have well-defined data sources, well-named data sources, well-named anything really, but we're talking about data sources here. So when we have well-named data sources, you understand where it's coming from, right? If this is Superstore, okay, great. It's Superstore. I know the general sort of theme of the data. I have an idea where it might be coming. But if we were to say Superstore orders and then go to our view, now we really know where it's coming from. Now we know it's coming from Superstore orders table. Fantastic. Okay? This is just good practice, helpful things. Now, let's see what this gives us. Generate field names automatically. Field names are in first row. Generate field names automatically. Ooh, that's not cool. Interesting. Okay, so this is, let's say you don't have field names in the first row, and you want them generated for you. I think this is really just, if Tableau recognizes that you don't have, that it's possible that you don't have field names in the first row, it's going to generate them automatically. Whereas if you do, it's going to default to this setting and just recognize them. I've never had to use this, so you probably won't need to bother with it as well. Let's also check these out. So duplicate. Interesting. So if you want to do an inner join of sorts on this and possibly another key, you can just duplicate it here. If you want to do some fun stuff with data densifications, create some Sankeys, that's a way to do it. Alrighty, so down to this row right here, we've got sort fields by the data source order. This means sort fields in the order that they've come to you in the data source. We can also sort them A to Z, Z to A, etc., etc. Now this looks like it repeats if we got multiple tables out here. This could be handy if you have a ton of columns in your data source. It could help you out there. If you know the column name that you're looking for, but you don't quite know where it's located in this crazy wide table, sorting A to Z sorting in some way may help you. But there's actually a better way to look for those field names. It's this right here. It is called Manage Metadata. So this Manage Metadata view, really, really handy. We get the field names right here, compact, ready to be edited. We just edit away, edit away, edit away, edit away, edit away. Right? Just tab, 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 shift tab, shift tab, shift tab. If you need to go through and update field names come from a data source that doesn't have field names that are quite as nice as you might like, this is a really fast way to do it. And it's a great way to go through and just look at your field names, as well as the table that they're coming from, and the remote field name, the field name from the original data source that these field names originate from. Great, they're remote. So you can also see the data types, etc., etc. But I actually think the preview data source view is a better way to mess with these data types that we're going to be talking about here. So if we go back to this preview data sources pane, but real quick, I do want to point out one thing, because I noticed it. That is the remote field name. Look at this guy. Calculation, crazy ID number, nobody needs to remember, is profit ratio. Under the hood, this is what it is. But we call it profit ratio. Just to give you an example of maybe you got some gnarly names coming from data in some table somewhere. You can pretty those up right here in the Manage Metadata view. Great. Point driven home. Now let's think about these data types a little bit. We see some various icons here, and I do want you to notice that they're two different colors. Hopefully that's clear. We've got a little green here, a little blue here. It tells us whether things are continuous or discrete. It's more of a Tableau sheet sort of thing when we click here and see if it's continuous green or a discrete blue. But it is something to take note of, right? It's more information packed in this little icon. They're dual encoded. Not only do we have a different shape between these, but the color actually encodes some meaning as well. So, let me take a sip of water before I get coughing. Okay, so we've got this green hash symbol. We've got a blue ABC, a blue calendar, some more ABC. Then we see these globes, ABCs, more pound signs. Is this one blue or green? I don't know. It's hard to tell. Got a paperclip and this little bar chart. Got a chart icon. I mean, it's a chart data type. Let's find out. Well, the data types in Tableau are these right here. We've got 6 of them. We have a number, as in 0.00, possibly. Not the whole number. Right now it's a whole number. And we just see the integer. No dot something, something, something. If we change it to a decimal, then we get a dot something, something, something. Right? This is a different data type altogether. And it's really, it's a little less efficient than this one right here. And that's another aspect of data types. When we say data types, we're talking about, ways that our computer we're sort of giving the computer information about the data in terms of how to allocate storage to this data, as well as how to, what functionality we might want with this data. We want to do different things with numbers than we might dates, than we might strings, than we might booleans. We want to do different things with these. I don't want to add 2 strings together, string being text, just some sort of like characters, right? I don't want to add those together. That doesn't make sense. That's not in the maths books. You know that maths might use variables, but those are converted into numbers and so on and so forth. It's not the same as this right here. And for the dates, we might want some month names, some nice week numbers, hours, seconds, minutes, things like that. And we don't really need that from these two, right? And when you're thinking about the data types that you choose, you want to be, you obviously need your data to perform in a certain way. And it's important to think about that before you bring the data into Tableau. Or maybe you bring it in and then you realize, hey, I actually need this functionality. Let me change the data type. And you can do that after this step. And just go in here, change data type, boom, change it. I will let you do that without having to go back to the data source. So that might, raise the question, why even bother with this thing if I can just do it in here? Well, it's one of those areas where if you do some planning, if you really think about how this data is going to be used, this is a much easier way to go through the data type sort of changes that one might like to make. That said, you can just use this as a check, right? Everything looking good, everything's looking good, great. Then go into Tableau and change it if something comes up. You can totally do that. Instances where you might not want to do that, and you should definitely check your data source before you go over to the view. For things like this, Tableau guessed that we want a whole number here, and I'm going to say I want a string, right? I don't want a number. I don't want it to try and aggregate my row ID. I don't want to do arithmetic on this thing. I just need it to be text, right? I just need it to be a string. That's a continuous string, so that's not really what I want either. So I'll need to change that in Tableau, it looks like. Can't change to discrete here, but at least to change the data type. Right. Okay. Now, if we look at some other data types, we see date and time and date. We've got this calendar icon over here. And this calendar icon, without the little clock, just means date. You see that date selected, date and time, right? Notice when we had number whole, we just had this number here. When we change it to number decimal, we get the decimal places. Interesting that it only gives us 2 now, whereas when we did that before, it gave us 3. Funny little Tableau thing. But let's change it back to string. The reason I went through that is because notice how we just have a date here. But when we change it to date and time, we get a time value out here. Pretty cool. Doesn't really make sense because our data is at the date level. But if it was lower, if it was a lower level, then changing to date time would give us that level. If we had a date time field and we chose date, that time value would just be clipped off, really rolling up to a higher level. Okay, little bit more efficient storage. But if you want that lower level of granularity, if it's worth it from a sort of performance standpoint, from a functionality standpoint, then do it. Go for that daytime. Let's see what else. All right, we can create a little calculation in here just to demonstrate what is a Boolean. Boolean equals second class. So, okay. Fantastic. We get a new icon. Handy, handy. And notice how it doesn't have a blue bar above it. It means it doesn't come from that data source, right? It doesn't come from the blue bar data source. It has no blue bar. It doesn't come from that data source. That's how that works. Tableau's got some solid UI practices. Very intuitive. Great. We also see calculation, orders, coming from the orders table, calculated. Also handy. So what's going on with this Boolean? Trues and falses, trues and falses. That's just what it is. If I were to start talking about data types at a lower level, it'd be something like underneath the hood, all the things in our computer, or all the processes in our computer, are trying to convert whatever we're up to down to ones and zeros so that it can flip some switches and make some things happen for us, right? That's what this like decompiling down to machine code is kind of about. And memory, sort of space on our disk, space on our drive, space on our computer, it's allocated in terms of bits, but bits are rolled up into bytes, and different data types have different take up, or sort of a different amount of bytes are reserved for different data types. Right? So a string is going to have more bytes reserved for it than a Boolean. Boolean, true or false, it's the fastest thing. It's the smallest step between what we see here and that 1 or 0 sort of thing that the machine's trying to get to, really. But to convert this down to ones and zeros is a lot trickier than true or false, true or false. 1 or 0, 1 or 0. What this actually has to do is there's a whole table called ASCII table, and there are codes there, and the machine has to go and convert each character in the string down to the code and compile it as such. It's just a process. It's just a process. So if you do have something that got flagged as a string data type, try to convert that to a number or Boolean. If a Boolean makes sense, it doesn't always make sense. Boolean is, on, off, yes, no. So it doesn't always make sense. But if it does, awesome. Try to get there. If not, number would be really cool too. It's unfortunate that I have, taken this number and told it to be a string, because it's just going to take up more space. So, that's the price I'm paying with the row ID. It's just the way the cookie crumbles. Alrighty, what else do we have? Those are all the data types. Those are all the data types. We do have some roles. We do have some geographic roles here. I'm not even sure. Oh, wow. Okay. So we can set a geographic role for things where that makes sense. And what this is going to do is it's basically going to allow us to access some of Tableau's mapping capabilities. So if we go to a view and we double click on one of these country is a string, state is a string, city is a string, postal code, string, number, debatable, but it's got a geographic role, meaning when I muck around with this, I want it to, go access some information that Tableau has about maps. Double click, and we get a map of the US. If I were to change this to continuous, double click, get something very different. Those things make a difference. Sorry to confuse you with that one. I'll just delete, change, back to discrete, noise. Go here, but these are not data types, right? So don't be confused by these icons showing you data type and then seeing a globe here and seeing a paperclip here and seeing a bar chart here. The icons aren't always one-to-one with data types. They don't always indicate a data type, but they do give you some information about the data below. What data types are, again, is you trying to store your data as efficiently as possible given the functionality you're after. That's really what they're about. Now to wrap up this last little bit here, let's look at the extract. Great. This is an option. If I were to, go to my sheet 1 now with the extract selected, yes, it prompts me to save this extract somewhere, right? And I could put it in this folder, and I'll do that. Just a demo. Fantastic. Now we know that we should be able to look at this. It should show me. Interesting. I would like to look at that extract. So how do I look at that extract? And then, well, I guess we know where it's, I thought we knew where it was hanging out. I don't know where that thing went. Very interesting. If I refresh it, where's it doing? Where is it going? Edit connection. And I don't see it here. Tis interesting. I don't see it. Womp. Maybe because, what if, I don't like that. Edit. No, not really interested in that. Well, I wanted to show you a TDE, a Tableau Data Extract. I wonder if we can do that by adding another data source. I really don't know what that does. I don't know if it works here. Very interesting. Okay. So if we go to, I want to do this one again. Ooh, okay. Go to Google Sheet data source, and I'll authenticate with my VisSimply account. It's done the job. Now I can go to my Talus Buildings dataset, connect to it. Takes me to the data preview, data sources tab. If we pull in removed formatting, I do an extract, and I go to sheet 1. We get this prompt again. This time, I'm going to go put it in my data, remove formatting, Talus Buildings, and save. Doing its thing, doing its thing, doing its thing. Maybe we didn't get an extra extract because it's already been extracted before, and Tableau realized that it's in the same structure. So what's the point in creating a TDE when we already have a TDS? Don't know. I don't know. But I do know that this is taking a while. Let's just wait for it. Wish I had some music to play. Definitely not gonna sing. I can barely talk. Oh yeah, doing something. Waiting, waiting, waiting. Keep waiting. Keep waiting. Sweet. Ah, and we get a different icon. Originally it was, or before it was just a single little cylinder. Now it's two cylinders. It's saying we pulled a cylinder from the other cylinder. We extracted another data, or a different data source from your original. Now let's see if the TDE is there. That's what I want to show you. So training, templates, data, and oh, wow, this is just me not being used to Tableau stuff in 10.5. We don't get TDEs anymore. We get .hyper files. Ooh, very cool. Interesting stuff. Alright, so maybe they should say like create hyper or get hyped or something. But yeah, we get a .hyper file. Okay, yeah, interesting. I used to be able to explain what TDEs were. I'm not really at the point where I can explain what hypers are about. There's some articles that I have on the calendar to read, and I'll get into there. But for now, just know that, hey, this file that we've created, it's different from our original. It's a format that Tableau really, really likes to use to visually explore data. And that's what that is. But I can delete it because it was really just a demo to try and show you what happens when you extract something. I close this, go back to our Superstore orders, data source, got this extract selected. It shows us the last extract, or data is up to date per this date. And we could refresh that if we want. We could refresh it here as well. The last thing I think we need to cover, I think we've covered every aspect of this, is the add filters. Sweet. And edit data source filters. There's a whole sort of like order of operations in terms of filters. The data source filter is the first filter applied, right? This happens at the data source level before you get into Tableau. So let's say I got county and postcode out here. What if I want to color? Oh, it's going to be so gross. How do I want to color this? Segment. Now, state. Where's it at? So gross. Definitely not teaching color in this lesson. It's just, yeah, it's what it is. All right. Let's just to try to be less embarrassing. I want to say create calculation state equals California is Cali. Sweet. A little better. Blah, blah, blah. A little better. But still not liking it. What I'm going to demo with this little shenanigan is when we put a data source filter on our state and select all, deselect California, click OK, we're going to say, give me everything but California. And then when we go to our view, California is no longer there. It's no longer present. We don't have access to it. I can't drag state out and say, oh, I want to, bring California back in. Nope, it's not on the list. It hasn't made it into our view because we filtered it out. Oh man, everything's going to go away. Just take that off. Because we filtered it out in our data sources tab, right? Prior to coming into our sheet. Really, really important little note here. So hope you store that one away. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Sorry about the coughs. Sorry about so many things. Can't apologize enough. I hope that in this video you've learned, I don't know what you've learned. I hope you've learned things. I hope it's raised questions for you. I hope that you are prepared to think about your data in terms of efficient storage and what you might want to do with said data. I didn't really talk about what we can do differently with strings versus booleans versus numbers, but just think about it. I'm not going to add text together. I'm not going to try to write I don't know, we do want those nice things that come across when we, option drag order out here. Oop, nope. So cool. When I convert this to continuous and option drag, we want these things. These are really handy. And we get these when it's a date data type. We'll get even more things if it's a date and time data type. These are helpers because Tableau says, hey, you got a date, I see, a date data type. And you might want to roll that up to the week, month, year, day, what have you. And we're gonna help you out. We've done some stuff. We've put some work around the date data type. And since you've put the thought into specifying that it is a date data type, we're going to give you those helper functions. Oh, you've got a number out here. Option drag that. Okay, we'll give you some aggregates, but we're not going to give you those handy-dandy date options because it's a number. If you wanted a date, then why don't you make it a date data type? Where's that ABC? Okay, option drag that. Okay, cool. Min, max, count, count D. Not really sure why those are available in the string or to the string data type. I do understand why adder's there, and I do understand why discrete, but these others don't make too much sense. So don't take them as wow, I should be taking the min, max, count, and count D of my text. You might want to do count or count D. Not saying you shouldn't. But strings are not really, they're not something that just like by default we're doing arithmetic on all over the place. I don't want to take quotients, ratios, etc. of those. We are making some cool little vizzes. Gotta say. All right, just clear that. Close this. Or delete that. Just amazing. So impressed with our viz skills. And I'm going to clear that. This refreshes. Bring Cali back and call it done. Call it done for data types. Call it done for the data sources tab. If I missed something, if something wasn't clear, let me know, and I can do another video. It takes me a while to ramp up to these things. It's not my natural sort of go-to, but if it's helpful for you, I'm down to do this. So thanks for watching.